Hello and welcome to the Divine Renovation podcast. My name is Dan O'Rourke and I'm in studio with a couple of great guys today. So Ron Huntley, good to see you, brother.
Good to be back.
And Father Simon, first time in our new studio. Welcome.
This is amazing. I can't get over it. It's like being in an airport hangar.
Well, our goal was to make the studio as big as Saint Benedict Parish. So
Okay. Well, we're close.
we're working on it. We'll just put a few pews in here and this might be where the next homily is. So look, guys, we're in September. September has a reputation, at least in Canada, as being a rather busy month. Are you finding it that way, Ron?
I am finding it that way, and it's fun coaching into the churches as well because you do the most planning you can over the summer to get ready, but you're never fully ready for the craziness of a brand new ministry season, and so we're all struggling to catch up and do our best and be a little better than we were last year.
So, Father Simon, you are as you lead Saint Benedict Parish. I imagine this is a time of great relaxation because
I've got so many amazing people. Yeah.
You've got so many, and we're going to be bringing one of them on later. We're going to be bringing on the guy who's doing all the work while you rest, Father Alex.
Yeah, well, as I typically say, the job of an assistant priest is to assist the pastor.
Yeah.
But an associate priest is, he does all the work. So
No, so in all seriousness, though, St. Benedict must be absolutely buzzing right now.
it is full on. I will say that. I think Kate's favorite term is nut bar, so I'll use that one too. It's, as much as you try to brace yourself for it, like you're saying, Ron, it's always September is September. You can't do anything about it, and it's busy. I mean, I feel like I've been wall to wall just with meetings and with phone calls and we're into crucial conversations and everything. It is, and I think people come out of the woodwork. They take a rest over the summer, and then the complaints department, the suggestions department, all of that stuff it's full throttle.
So I know St. Benedict Parish, because we're in Canada, we don't run Alpha typically in the summer because everyone's at the beach. It's a Canadian norm. Everyone, instead of going to church during the weekdays, they go to the beach during the weekdays. But now that
they wear their wetsuits at the beach
they wear their
in Canada. Yeah,
the water's pretty cold in Nova Scotia. But now we're into the fall, which must mean Alpha.
it sure does.
So tell me where we are with Alpha.
So right after Labor Day, so that's the first weekend in September. Right after that, the next 2 weekends we called it Ready or Not. And that was our preaching series. And basically, it was an Alpha launch. It was the kickoff.
Yep.
And so what we've been doing for many years, long before I arrived, before an Alpha season, we would have 2 weeks in a row where we'd have live witnesses at the masses. And so we're blessed this year. We've got so many. So we actually had 2 and 2. So a total of 4 people over these last couple of weeks sharing. And Ron, I should get you to speak to. You were sitting in the pew one week and just really touched.
Amazed. Both times the stories were so compelling, so genuine and honest, and just life transformation. And it's so fun because I often say Jesus is in the life transformation business, so his church should be as well. And when you hear stories like that, it really reminds you about what the most important thing is. And it was so good. And in fact, for any of our listeners, our viewers, I would say go to the live stream from Saint Benedict and watch. The homilies were amazing too, by the way. And I say that seriously because you guys have gotten really good at teeing up this whole culture of invitation. And it's not something that's intuitive. And so if people are trying to figure out how do we do this well, I really would say watch those homilies and how it led into the testimonies, because I believe I don't know if it could have been done better. I was really inspired, and it never gets old.
So for those who haven't seen a testimony or a witness at St. Benedict Parish, Father Simon, how does it work? Like, are you bringing them up at the beginning of the Mass, at the announcements at the end? Where are they showing up?
So after the homilies, typically when we do it, so we'll give a full homily. We try to trim it down for a few minutes. I think both Father Alex and I had an epic fail on the trimming of the homily, but
not as much trimming as was planned.
Not as much, yeah. But in any case, so giving a full message based on the readings and our theme and trying to link it all together, and then towards the end of it, inviting somebody up. Now, our Lady Tanya, who is leading our Alpha, she has worked with these people ahead of time to prepare their witness so that it's tight, it's clear, and I have to say this year, just spot on, exactly the things you want to hear. People expressing their struggle with, hey, I resisted Alpha. I didn't want to go for all these reasons, and then I finally gave in. Or, one lady sharing her story. This is just the process working right. She approached us about a year ago or so, wanting to get her little one baptized.
That's her.
And-
I heard the story. I didn't know that was her.
She is not a Catholic. She's married to a Catholic who's not practicing. And yet she just felt like baptism was the right thing to do, as so often is the case. And Carol, who happens to be our key volunteer, serving in ministry in our baptism prep, she's kind of the gatekeeper, if you will, the front end when people inquire about baptism prep. Carol just lovingly came alongside her and say, listen, I know that you're asking for baptism. Maybe in different words, ultimately what you're really asking for is Jesus. And so I would invite you to try something called Alpha. And so I think it was last spring, during the daytime, it just so happened a group of moms, all with young infants, happened to be on the same Alpha together and talk about life transformation. All of them blown away. They've started their own moms group, and they're just supporting each other. I saw a slideshow they created the other day. It was beautiful, and so she is now witnessing to all that's happened to her on Alpha. She herself, the mom, has not yet become Catholic, but she's beginning the RCIA process, and God willing,
even though
next
she wasn't
Easter,
Catholic, she was up giving a witness on Sunday?
absolutely.
That's beautiful. Ron, help me understand.
So excited. Because you know what that is? That's the difference between running Alpha as a course and running Alpha as a culture. When you have key volunteers who see the value and how Alpha can be leveraged as a tool to bring somebody to Christ, that they're not she's been on the Alpha team, Carol, before, for a long time, helping me out with a lot of different things. But here she gets it. And when you get it and you see an opportunity, you can link those two things and change somebody's life. That's the benefit and value of running Alpha as a culture versus a course. And I'm just so excited.
So, Ron, help me understand, why is it important that we actually have those live testimonies at Mass? Because there's all sorts of ways that you could do it. You could shove a testimony into a bulletin, as a for instance, or you could maybe send out a short email. But, Father Simon is bringing them into the parish. Why do you see that as important?
And I think they're all important, because the Benedictus, the monthly newsletter, does have the written testimonies as well as part of a lot of that. But something Father Pat, and he was with us last week on the podcast, he said to me years ago, and it actually changed my life. I was really frustrated at one point because I just had this burning desire to tell people about Christ, but I didn't really know how to do it very well. And one day I was in his kitchen, we're having a tea together, and I looked at him and I said, I wish I had your collar so that when I talked about Jesus, people listened. And he thought for a minute, and he said, you know what? Sometimes I wish I wore your tie so that when I talked about Jesus, people didn't think I was doing it because that's how I make my living. He said, Ron, you're just like them. And when you talk about Jesus, people can relate to you. And that's why we have testimonies. It's not one or the other. It's one and the other. And I think as we, as baptized Christians, begin to recognize our story matters, and as we begin to develop a church where people's stories are valued and there's platforms that we can speak into them and people can get better at delivering them, we're going to change the world.
Amen. Wow, that's powerful.
One thing I just want to add, because I love this time of year so much, and I don't realize it, but until it comes, that this is our why. We exist to bring people into relationship with Jesus as a church, as a Catholic church. That's our number one job. And all the other stuff is there to support it and sustain people who are living that relationship with Christ. And so for me, over the summer, different ways, trying to keep the fire burning. And we tried beta, we've talked about that, and just a nice little innovation. But I have to say, it does something to me every time a new Alpha is starting up, because that whole invitational piece is so real and at the forefront. I realize, oh yeah, I myself, I'm the pastor. I can delegate it off to other people to be inviting, but I have to be in the game. I have to be inviting. So I was out the other day at Home Depot buying some blinds. I wanted to put up some blinds in my room, and talking to the guy. And as I happened to be wearing my collar, and he asked me, "Are you some kind of minister or what?" I'm like, "Well, I'm a priest," and I'm explaining it to him, and so eventually he was just beautifully open and unaware, really. And I said, listen, you've got some great questions. There's this thing we're doing just down the street, I think, and he'd actually been to Saint Benedict once for a funeral, as it turns out.
Right.
I said, we're doing this thing. It's called Alpha. It's a great way to bring your questions and just have discussions and learn. And I'd like to invite you to come. And so he just said, well, I'll consider it. Yeah, thank you. And so that just, it always does something to me, that renewing that fire of, yeah, we have to be inviting, we have to be reaching out beyond the walls of the church.
Serious
to
question.
bring people.
Easy or hard for you? Like, do you find that easy or hard to say to some random guy at Home Depot, hey, come on, come hang out with me and some friends at church? Like seriously, easy or hard?
Well, it's not easy. It's not easy in one sense. I remember just being the shyest kid ever growing up, honestly. And so going out of my way to meet, you're like, yeah, right.
Well, you stand in front of like hundreds and hundreds of people every Sunday, more than once. So, it's a little hard to
I've
believe.
grown a little bit since then, but
You've certainly
honestly,
changed.
that would have been a disposition,
Yeah.
just kind of quiet. I'd rather not rock the boat, rather not have to get into conflict or anything. You know what? You be you.
I'm
I'll
going
be
to talk
me,
to your mom about this later. I'm finding this hard to believe. Keep going.
But I will say, of all the invitations I've heard Father James say the exact same thing, of all the things, the big asks to make, to say to somebody, hey, listen, we're doing this thing. We'll serve you a meal. We'll listen to a talk that it's really going to be relevant, and then just have a conversation about it. Of all the things that we ask people to do and try, it's a pretty easy ask.
Right.
And all we can do is ask. And I have to say, I'm excited this year. I've talked to a few people, even a few older couples who've been in the parish for a long time. One couple came up to me after hearing Father Alex's homily last week and the witness, and just saying, Father, I've run out of excuses. And what do you mean? I've signed up for Alpha. After all these, this is someone who's been there, actually predating the opening of Saint Benedict Parish in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And they've
That
finally,
testimony, right? Like, didn't he nail it? Like, it was just so
Absolutely.
beautiful, but he was that guy. He was that guy. And he just shared how he used to be that guy, but he's not that guy anymore. And Jesus has changed his life, even though he's a lifelong Catholic.
Yeah.
For people listening to the podcast, they hear us talk about Alpha a lot. And the funny thing is, that's exactly what we do at the parish too. So yeah, we talk about this a lot. And so, if you feel like you're hearing the same thing from us, it's because that's exactly what we live out in the parish environment.
Well, Dan, it's kind of interesting because, we talk about it from the parish level, but you just came back from a meeting with Father James, and you were talking about
my
Alpha
goodness.
globally. What happened there?
So cool. So I love the global leadership of Alpha. So for those who don't know, there's a big, or Alpha is actually a ministry. It's a very large ministry. It's an international ministry, and they're divided into different countries and regions, and there's just hundreds of employees. And what was so cool was so Kitty K. Shuttleworth, who is one of the people who we invited to speak at the Divine Renovation 2018 conference, and she's just a phenomenal leader. So she oversees the strategy in the Catholic context, and now she actually oversees the strategy writ large for Alpha. And Matthew Neville, who's the CEO of Alpha, they brought together all the Catholic context people from around the world.
All of them?
Almost all of them. There was a couple. I think there was two missing that weren't able to make it. But other than those two, we had all these countries and regions. And it was you would not believe the stories. And what it was for me, it was so affirming. It was so inspirational because I started hearing about all these parishes and these people doing divine renovation, and just how important divine renovation has been for Alpha. As they try and get Alphas to run successfully, they're finding that Alpha runs most successfully in the context of a parish doing divine renovation or something like it. But Alpha, in the absence of those things, doesn't have the same kind of success. And it was just so affirming to hear how many people in all these different, we had some countries I couldn't even name. I'm embarrassed to admit it. But there's countries I didn't even really know of, or where I couldn't put them on a map. And here they are, they're experiencing this beautiful growth and health, and it was just so exciting and so inspirational to be with all those leaders.
It's interesting, that one of the podcasts Father James and I did quite some time ago before we had the video podcast was How to Kill Alpha in 10 Easy Steps. Yeah. And truly, it's quite by accident that we do it. And the reason we could speak into it is because we've done them all several times. And so eventually, if you don't kill it, you learn from your mistakes. And so it doesn't surprise me that Alpha, isn't it neat? Alpha's recognizing that as we coach into leaders to really help them learn how to lead out of a team and put Alpha in the context of a bigger picture, that's when it has its full and biggest lasting impact in churches. That's how we go from doing it from a course to a culture. And there's a lot of nuances that you're probably not going to get.
Yeah.
And that's where the Divine Renovation Association with all those videos and
here's something, this will resonate with you, Ron, because it's something I think I picked up on over the course of the days I was with all those folks. all these different contexts. You can picture all over Europe, you're dealing with France and the UK and other, all across Spain and all Latin American countries. And then of course, North American countries and and Asian countries, my heavens. And you know what? They're so similar. They're so similar. They're struggling with the same things. And it's like, we often think we're all so unique, but I'm just seeing the church, it's struggling with the same things, and the solutions are often the same solutions.
It's so true. I was just coaching, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking about Deacon John in Mississippi. I was coaching into them this week, and I was having that conversation, but as it related to something else, just saying how people think they're so unique. In fact, even in our own diocese, you say, oh yeah, but that was Saint Benedict. Like people in Dartmouth would say that about us. So we have this self-image of just nobody knows how hard it is or difficult it is or what we wrestle with. And to some degree that's true, but to a greater degree, we actually wrestle with a lot of the same things. You're right. But anyway, one of the things Deacon John said as we were talking about something, he says, yeah, Ron, but before you answer that, you just have to remember how unique we are down here in Mississippi. And we just all had a good laugh. Yeah. He's always making me laugh.
So I know that Saint Benedict, I've got insider knowledge for this, Simon. I've got plants inside your parish.
Your parish, you mean?
Yeah, my parish. I got plants inside of my parish. They're called my friends. And my family. But I understand that there's that you guys are going through a bit of a reorg. Now, we don't have to get into the details of the reorg, but I want to get a sense of how does that impact you as a pastor? How does it impact the parish? And then what are some of the things you might be doing to make sure it's a healthy transition?
Well, I do want to get into the details of the reorg because I want to blame you guys primarily. You put us in this situation.
You back here behind the bar with me
by bringing Rob McDowell, the superstar, on to. We're kind of sharing him. It's about 3/4 time.
He still hangs out with you a little
at DR, and a quarter time I was able to negotiate you back, so I could still keep him for some of his great expertise on my senior leadership team and helping with preaching support, which is so awesome and so much fun. Because of Rob moving over, we had this hole he had been leading our operations team, and so we decided to actually merge a couple of teams together. And we've gone from 4 teams back down to 3 teams, which is where we were when I actually came on board about 3 years ago. But a whole bunch of different people, right? And so we're actually in a forming stage again. And Ron, you talk about this so much, the psychology of teams forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. And we're at that place again. Yeah. And I am so impressed by my team, formerly called the clergy team, now I think we're calling it worship and sacraments team.
Cool.
I'm doing the worst at going through this forming stage, but I'm so impressed by Kate, who's leading, we're calling it the mission support team. And so everything from the office and finance and the building, but also communications and AV.
Oh, cool.
And then Bill's leading what we're calling the disciple formation team. And so all that frontline ministry stuff, kids, youth, Alpha, discipleship groups, and I'm probably forgetting something.
The most important one.
Yeah, sacraments. Anyways, and so they're doing such a beautiful job when they meet as teams. They're taking the time to. Kate was just saying the other day how they're doing highs and lows, and then they're just, hey, what are the things that you're working on, and just starting to understand. Oh, that's how so-and-so spends their day. I had no idea. How cool is that? And just growing in admiration for one another, starting to gel, spending significant time praying together as a team, rather than the tendency, which I fall into so often, is we got a long list of tactical decisions we've got to go through and hammer through, and let's just do the list. But
assume that we're going to be okay, and that that everybody gets the culture and knows all, because we make assumptions, don't we? And then we focus on the to-do list. But
absolutely. And so they're doing such a good job, both Bill and Kate, in leading their teams. And we've been able to have a few really important, crucial conversations just to set the table. Not like a heavy conversation, but to say, hey, as we begin, let's be attentive to some of these things, some of these dynamics on our team, because we want to talk about this now before we get in the middle of a storm.
Because it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's not if, but when. And so we want to be ready. and start to invest and put trust in the bank now, so that we're
So
there.
Ron, I mean, Saint
Makes my
Benedict's a
day.
big parish with a lot of staff.
Yes.
For smaller parishes, do they have to go through stuff like this? Is forming part of what happens with them?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked, because truly, even a ministry has to go through this. If you have a shift in personnel or volunteers, or there's a difference in mandate, if there's a shift in the mandate, you really do have to be careful of the assumptions you try to bring with you. It's way better if you reform again and do it intentionally. Have those discussions about clarity of roles and things like that. I mean, the truth be known, we've grown a lot on this side. And to your point, Rob's come over and working with us now, and we're so excited about that. But this is a different relationship for he and I in terms of how we used to work before. We're not working like that anymore. And so there's assumptions that you have and discussions you need to have so that you make sure that you're forming vulnerably trusting relationships. It's built on vulnerability-based trust. Any teams that are going to be able to withstand storms, they're going to do it because they trust each other, they care about each other, and they know how to have those crucial conversations in ways that are healthy, so that they can work out their issues. Because we are broken, but it's our brokenness that if we're humble enough to talk about our feelings and how things are impacting us and go to people without letting things do too long, then I think what we can do is begin to trust each other, that when we disagree or when I'm hurt, we'll be able to resolve those issues and get back to normal quick. And that's when you can perform. That's when you can focus on the mission. And that's when we have the most fun and the least amount of stress. But you know what? I love coaching into it. I'm not a big fan of going through it, but truth be known, we are going through it too. And I'm thankful for it at the same time, because it helps me remember how important these principles really are, and they never go away. You just cycle through them.
Right. Well, I'm gonna cut us off here, because part of the forming is you decided to invite a brother priest into Saint Benedict Parish, the associate priest who's now doing all the work. So
it wasn't just my decision, but gratefully received him. Yeah,
gratefully received him, and he's a hardworking guy. And so I'd love for us to get a chance to talk to him and meet him a bit. So we'll be right back, and we'll introduce you to Alex Colautti. It is so cool to be in studio with not one priest, but two priests. And the second one is Father Alex Colautti. Father Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. It's awesome to be here. I'm so excited. I'm a little bit nervous, but no, this is so great. Wonderful
You know why?
experience.
You know why you're nervous?
Yeah, tell me.
Because so listeners won't know this, but three of us are color coordinated in black shirts today, and Ron, you're on that side of the bar wearing blue, and so you're a bit scary looking.
Intimidating.
Yeah, black's not scary.
It's like another team snuck in. It's
blue avatar over here.
So, Father Alex, it really is great to have you on, because you've been here local in Halifax for a little while. I think we might have talked about you on the podcast, but we never actually brought you on.
Okay.
So what brought you to Halifax?
What brought me to Halifax? Well, I heard you were here, Dan, and I just wanted to come see what you were up to. And I'm
sorry to disappoint.
Well, it hasn't been a disappointment. It's been better than I ever expected. I came here. I'm newly ordained. I was ordained May 5th. And I came out here to work with Father Simon, to be apprenticed by him, taught by him.
So you're like the divine renovation apprentice.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Got it. Hey,
That's
book title, future book title.
Future book title.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Divine renovation.
DR Apprentice squared.
It's cool.
Yeah, so,
I see that as being a big seller, even probably better than the prequel.
well, it's hard to improve on that, but we'll see. We'll see.
That's beautiful. So help me understand what it's like, Father Alex, to be both a baby priest coming into the priesthood at the same time as stepping into a parish like Saint Benedict Parish and working alongside a guy named like Father Simon. What's that like?
Terrifying. No, it's so awesome. I mean, I honestly, I feel like people ask me all the time, hey, Alex, like, how does it feel? What's it like? And I say, I'm living the dream. Like, I really am. It's like when our general superior approached me and he just asked me, we had started to have conversations about where I was going to get sent. And he just said, hey, where would you like to go? And right away, I saw Saint Benedict with Father Simon. I thought that's a place cool. I'd like to go for a whole variety of reasons. And it's amazing as a first-time priest, a new priest, newly ordained. It is a little terrifying. I'll freely admit that. I mean, everything's new, everything's exciting. And I'm still learning what it's like to be a priest. It's all just so new, but I'm so excited, and it's been amazing. It has. I've learned so much.
I got to be with Father Alex when he did his first anointing of the sick. So for a priest, that's pretty commonplace.
Yep.
But I was right there with you the very first time, somebody who's on their deathbed and being able to give them the sacrament. And it was beautiful. And I think it was like I was be able to walk through those early moments of my own priesthood. I've been ordained 9 years now, which is not a ton of time to write home about, but it's something. But to relive some of those early things again through your eyes, it's been beautiful for me.
Mm-hmm. What's it been like as you've sort of engaged with the Saint Benedict Parish community? Have they been welcoming? Like, help me understand. What is it like for a priest coming into Saint Benedict?
So I show up in my first weekend debut. I'm introduced, and Father Simon makes fun of me in front of the whole parish. Of course, he calls me the baby priest, and there's a picture of me on my head on a baby's body. And then I'm standing out. I remember, standing outside the doors, greeting people as they come out after Mass. It's just like this mass of like 600 people coming at me. And it's just overwhelming, right? It's just like, and I don't know anybody. I don't know anyone's names, and they're telling me their names. And I'm like, okay, great to meet you. I'll see you when I see you. I can't possibly remember everyone's names. And it's just everything is so new. And I'm really going through like a paradigm shift, right? I'm meeting people, women in their 80s, calling me father. Like that's just, it's hard to wrap my mind around that, right? Because now I've moved from a place where like basically I've been a student in seminary for 7 years to now a place where people just look at me. I'm a spiritual father, whether or not I'm good at it, right? Yeah. I'm just, by virtue of ordination, I'm a leader, whether or not I'm good at it. And so everything's new, and I have so much to learn, and it's scary, but I'm surrounded by amazing people, Saint Benedict parishioners, Father Simon, the staff, amazing team. It's just, I'm so blessed to be there.
It's not everybody's experience either, Father Alex. I'm happy for you. I thought it was neat. I didn't know that you would ask to come, because we couldn't have asked for a better fit. Like just as a parishioner, watching you two work together and throw each other under the bus during homilies, just like when Father James and
it's awesome.
Very similar. But I know we've also had some priests that had come out of the seminary, and their first assignment wasn't one that they necessarily had a role model that they could look up to, or a church that was alive. And I know that can be hard. But even when it's good, even when it's exciting, it's still hard. It's still a paradigm shift. Yeah. It's like emotionally, what's that been like?
Yeah, well, even I haven't done a funeral yet, and I haven't done a marriage yet, and I've done my first baptism at Saint Benedict. And it just came out today. There's a funeral to do on Wednesday, and even the thought of that caused anxiety. I haven't done this before. Now I want to do it because I want to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to serve God and His people, of course. But it's just like all these experiences, preaching in front of. I went from preaching so as a deacon, I got assigned to this little inner city parish in Detroit, and we had 80 people on the weekend. So
that's a total.
Total.
Like at both the masses
At both
combined.
the masses, 80 people. Yes, that's a total. So I went from preaching to 80 people once a month, now to preaching to 1,500 people in a weekend. And it's like emotionally, I remember sitting one day, I was presiding at Mass and preaching, and I was sitting there in the chair, and it was during one of the readings, and I fantasized like just walking out and leaving. Literally. Like I'm not even joking, right? It was like, it's terrifying. And then I had to get up and deliver this message, right? To the people of God. And it's all of it. It's terrifying. Yeah. Right? And so, just again, paradigm shift. It's all paradigm shifts. Yeah. Right? Going from a place where in seminary, it's all new, right? It's all new. And emotional highs and lows, and excitement and fears. All my insecurities are coming out, all that stuff, right?
So Father Simon was talking a little bit about the forming happening at Saint Benedict Parish right now, and you must be part of that mix. And I know at Saint Benedict there's a senior leadership team that sort of leads that parish. Now, are you on that senior leadership team?
Yeah, I am. I don't I don't have a lot of input at this point, right, as I learn. And but I remember sitting my first SLT meeting, senior leadership team meeting. I was sitting there, and everyone's talking, and there's a discussion going on. And again, I'm coming from a place where I don't have the context, so I don't have much to contribute, but I'm following and learning. And all of a sudden, Father Simon and one of the SLT members are in a conversation, and I'm like, wait a second, we're in a crucial conversation right now. Like I didn't
temperature change.
I didn't even see it happen. I didn't see it come on. It's suddenly Father Simon's having a crucial conversation with an LCT member. So that was like my first introduction to the senior leadership
They eased you in, didn't
right?
they?
We planned that. We choreographed the whole thing.
Yeah.
So what is it like being in an SLT? I mean, for a priest who's both new to being in parish ministry and also being on a senior leadership team in that kind of environment, what's that experience like?
It's awesome and it's scary. It's intimidating. Sitting in there and we have an amazing team. Bill Scollard, Kate Robinson, Father Simon, and Rob McDowell, and incredible, gifted people, bright people, intelligent people. And sitting there, I'm like, man, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. No, I'm not used to that feeling, right?
I am. You'll get over it.
I'm getting used to it. And so I'm like, I'm working with people who are excellent at what they do. They're amazing. They're in love with God. They're in love with the mission. And man, it's just like I feel I'm just so lucky. I'm just trying to be a sponge and soak it all up, And every once in a while, I'll say something stupid and contribute to the conversation. But
So there's a bit of false humility because Father Alex
I agree.
I would say in 10 weeks he's seeing things, he's got insights that it's taken me about 10 years to figure out. So seriously, this man is extremely gifted. But I just want to circle back, so you mentioned this crucial conversation we were in. I do remember it. I don't remember the topic even, but I remember being in it and the feeling. And it's never fun. It's always a bit awkward, but it was, how did it feel for you and what did you do afterwards? To follow up?
So I've been in, I've seen awkward conversations and conflict and it usually, the experience, right? You start to kind of, oh man, like I shouldn't be here. I'd like to get out of the room right now. These two people can work it out. But it didn't feel like that at all. It was comfortable. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't embarrassing. And, Father Simon noticed like there was some tension around a particular issue. And Father Simon, kudos to him. He's like, hey, I'm kind of getting a sense like there's a little pushback or tension around this. Let's drill down on that. Like, why are you feeling that way? And he just sat there and he listened as the person kind of brought some things, and he's like, okay, and they just talked it out right then and there. They kind of worked it out, and I just remember like, this is amazing. This is the team I'm a part of where it's okay to have conflict. No one has to feel embarrassed about it. Like this is normal, right? And for me, just that concept blew me away. And I remember I went to talk to the person with whom the sort of crucial conversation happened, and I said, hey, I just want to really affirm you for your courage in being open and vulnerable and honest and like, hey, what was that like for you? And they just said, hey, like, I am so thankful that we have Father Simon and his leadership, that it's okay to have these conversations. And it's a place where I feel safe and we can do that, Simon Sinek said something recently. He said, a team is not a group of people who work together, but a group of people who trust each other. And that's what I saw that day at my first SLT meeting.
It's beautiful to experience it, isn't it? Because you think, in terms of your work life experience and stuff before you join the priesthood or what have you, not a lot of teams have that level of health. And I remember when I was speaking in Australia, I don't know how many people came up to me and said, everything you've just talked about, I'm going to apply to my business, because there are lay people there who work for a living. Right. And all these principles. Can you imagine if businesses function like this?
I just was in one this morning. It's kind of my middle name is Crucial Conversation. I think they kind of say the more leadership you end up with, the more this is normal. And so I've just come to accept it. It's part of my life. And so this was an interesting one involving 4 people. And I have to say, we booked an hour. We probably took closer to 2 hours. And it was a 10 out of 10.
Cool way.
And it felt so good walking out of it, thinking, and one other person mentioned this before we ended, like, think about the kind of culture that we have. Where else would this kind of a conversation, where would it be safe to have and talk so openly and vulnerably and grow together? It's exciting. I love it. I really do.
So Father Alex, with not only SLT, I suspect that's not your only contribution at the parish. I've heard you preach, but you must be taking on some ministries as well.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it's all new, and I'm slowly being onboarded. And I just was we just had a ministry handoff in baptismal prep.
Okay.
And so that's been, a really cool experience. We're just at the beginning of that. It so much to learn, right? I learn these new lessons every day. And I would just remember, as reflecting on that sort of ministry handoff, I was just thinking basically what happened was there was a meeting, and the meeting wasn't for the ministry handoff. It was to help other members. We were invited a bunch of potential new members of the baptismal prep. And so it was sort of a presentation to them about what we do and why we do what we do and sort of some of the roles. And so that the handoff kind of happened leading up to this meeting. And so we announced it at that meeting, right? That I would be sort of bus driving the baptismal prep ministry. And I remember just thinking after, I feel like I missed an opportunity. Like I kind of dropped the ball because, whenever there's a handoff, right, there's all kinds of different assumptions and questions in the people who are on the team.
True.
Right? Like, who's this new guy? Like, I'm new to the parish and I'm new to the ministry. They don't know much about me. They don't know my expectations. They don't know if my vision is in alignment with their vision. And so the handoff was basically like, Alex is going to be driving this as of the end of this meeting. And that was kind of it.
Wow,
But
there's the bomb.
Right. And I thought to myself, I should have asked if I could, say something and thanked, the team for the amazing work that they do, and just sort of explain, I'm not here to change anything. I'm here to help just move this thing forward, encourage you and support you and learn from you in the great things that you've been doing through baptismal prep. So.
Well, I think too, Alex, and for anybody listening, this is a great conversation because it's okay that happened, but it's not just you either. I think to myself, as the leader that was running that before, what could the team learn differently? Right? I appreciate that you're taking that on, but I hope everybody's taking that on because we can do transitions better.
Right.
And so as an entire staff, we need to think through, when we're transitioning, hey, if we blew one, that's okay.
Right.
Because we're going to make mistakes. But can we learn from those mistakes so that we can transition well? Because transitioning is really important because it brings instability sometimes.
Sure.
And I think that's what you're picking up on.
Yeah.
But I hope that your whole team is, the whole team is thinking through those things because these are great learnings.
Yeah.
And it's fun that we're even talking about it. So if anybody's listening and you're about to go through a transition or you just went through a transition, ask yourself those questions. Be aware of how you're feeling and talk it out so that you can learn from it so that we can be great at transitions.
Yeah.
We talked this through a bit, and I asked you to even write a bit of a reflection of what you're learning from this because it was rich. It's rich learning you'll never get from a book, right? To be in the midst of it. And I think back, this is such a micro example. I remember your shoulders or something. You're like, oh man, I blew that.
Yeah.
It's it's not a big deal.
No.
It's, the next meeting you'll pick it up and run with it. I know. But I think back to that macro example of the transition that we experienced as a parish with Father James handing off the baton to me as pastor. And looking back, there was such a blessing of the Spirit, and I'm so grateful to Father James for the way that he did that. And he at every opportunity when this subject came up, he said, "Hey, Father Simon, he's going to be leading, and he's going to be amazing, and he's got the gifts that we need for right now."
He was
for the
setting you up
He
for
was
success.
constantly doing that. And then the thing that I hated was he said, "Hey, I want you to give a vision talk at the leadership summit." And I hadn't even become pastor yet. I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not a visionary. I don't know how to do that stuff. And he pushed me, he forced me. And I'm so grateful that he did, because it got me out of my comfort zone, and it started to get me in touch with what am I passionate about, and started giving me permission to dream. And as I gave that talk and then gave it later as a homily to the parish as a whole, what he had done was he had intentionally created space for people to hear my voice and hear my heart and get a bit of a sense of me, who I am, and what I'm going to be like as leader. Now, of course, we're constantly changing and growing and learning, but that little opportunity missed, like to have people hear Father Alex's voice and what's his heart for baptism prep, and your whatever that is, your passion for seeing children and their families coming to Christ, and this being one step on the journey, or whatever. But anyways, wonderful learnings. Wonderful learnings.
Yeah, I remember how intentional Father James was around. He literally had a vision for what transition could look like. And it was interesting because I didn't even think about it. And then as he's unpacking it and talking about the things that he was going to do, I was just like, I wouldn't even have thought of half those things. So to be able to talk about them as a team, to figure it out, and what are the best platforms to communicate different things, because it may not be just that one meeting. There might be pre-meetings. So we need to think about strategically who's going to be impacted, how are they going to be impacted, and how do we set everybody up for success. So if you're the one transitioning out, you need to ask yourself, how can I set my team and the person who's going to replace me up for the best success? Right? That's what we have to be asking ourselves as we pass the baton. Right? Like, how can I do that in a way that you have wild success and people can anticipate your positive impact on their life? Yeah.
That's so cool. So, Father Alex, pardon me, the primary way I've experienced your priesthood so far is when you've gotten up and given killer homilies.
True.
You have a real gift at homiletics.
Dan,
You
I
are a
appreciate it.
great preacher. So help me understand. I mean, Saint Benedict has a bit of an odd way of approaching some of these things. So
Right.
how have you fit into the sort of the patterns of that?
Yeah, again, so much about Saint Benedict is unique, and I don't think it should be unique. It should be normative, right? The things we do at Saint Benedict should be normal everywhere in the church, and one of them is preaching, right? For us at Saint Benedict, preaching it's a team sport, right? Whereas everywhere else I've ever seen it done, whoever is in charge of preaching just kind of goes off on their own. They go into the scriptures and they read and they prepare a homily, and nobody knows what he's going to say until Sunday morning, right? Surprise!
Sometimes the priest himself has no idea.
And if there's any feedback, it's like after the fact when it's too late.
Oh, good homily, Father.
Yeah, exactly. So, but at Saint Benedict, it really is a team sport. It's amazing, we've got Rob McDowell, who's amazing. He sends incredible notes. I'll sit down, I'll have a chat with him, and we'll just talk about what's going on in the scriptures, what we're trying to communicate, what the goal is. And then part of what we do is the worship and sacraments team. We gather on Wednesdays and we'll do a Lectio Divina as part of our prayer together. And people are sharing their insights about the scriptures for that weekend. And it always blows me away what people say, right? Like the insights they come up with. And then I'll continue writing or whatever. And then I'll often have a conversation with Father Simon. And I just find that so helpful when you're able to talk through ideas, really focus on what am I trying to say? What's the why? Why is it important? And what do I want them to do, right? We talk about that. That's written in the book Divine Renovation, the 3 questions. And just find that brings so much clarity. And then I deliver the message Saturday night. And often I'll get some feedback after and tweak it for Sunday morning. So, I can't take credit. If the homilies are good, it's because the team is good. That's really what it comes down to.
How do you write your jokes?
They could use some help in that department.
I know. I'm dying.
I want to be funny like you. How do I be funny?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, humor, I find, is the hardest part.
I agree.
It's the hardest part of the homily. And it's the last part. in some ways. I'm like, sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm reading through this. I'm like, gosh, this homily is so boring. Lord, please help me be funny. Like, give me something. And you know what? Sometimes it's hilarious. Sometimes I'll get an inspiration just after making a prayer like that.
Why do you think humor is important?
Humor is so important because, it engages people in your message. It draws them in. And if you don't capture people's attention in the first few minutes, then everything else you have to say is pointless because they're not listening, right? You've lost them. So humor is important because it engages them, it draws them in. But also think that, strategically placed humor opens people to receive the next thing you have to say, right? And it breaks up the message so that it's not all hard and long. And it really facilitates, I think, preaching the word of God, right? If we want to, if the word of God is a seed we want to sow in people's hearts, we have to get their hearts open. And humor is a tool, right? It's an instrument for that.
Well, I think we're all so grateful for the way you've blessed us with your homilies, you've blessed us with your preaching, and the way you've blessed our community by joining us. So thank you, Father Alex, for being part of Saint Benedict Parish and being part of Divine Renovation.
Well, it's amazing to be here. It's amazing to be able to work with you and learn from you, and I'm surrounded by amazing people. So I thank you for your work and your commitment to moving parishes and ministries from maintenance to mission.
Oh, amen. So if you're interested in learning more about Divine Renovation, you can check us out on our website. That's www.divinerenovation.net. I'd ask for your prayers. We've got a big conference coming up in Chicago, and it would just be great if we could encourage you to pray for us. It feels like it's a really big event, and our team's working hard to pull it together, and so is the Archdiocese there in Chicago. And finally, if you haven't yet chosen to commit yourself to mission, or if you have chosen to commit yourself to mission and haven't clicked the button on our website, I'd encourage you to do so. In part, it's one way for us to connect with you, to give you information. We have a newsletter that we send out, and we just would love you to be on that list so that you can stay in touch with the kinds of things that we're up to. And just God bless you as you continue to embrace being a missional parish.